Hello and welcome to another quickfire question quiz. This time we're looking at the topic B2. Same as we did for B1, we have 50 questions. This is the time to grab your friends, get on a Zoom chat and compete against each other in your knowledge of B2. Hopefully you spent some time looking through the playlist that's on my YouTube channel and you can have done some revision to prepare yourself ready for this quiz. We'll stop halfway through, you can have a little break. And hopefully we'll get some good points. You can let me know how you've done by sending it over to me on Show My Homework. So we're going to go with the enthusiastic quizmaster voice while we do this B2 quickfire question quiz. First question, what is the name of the enzyme which digests fat? If you're playing on your own, you can shout at the screen. You can use a mini whiteboard if you have one, or you can just write your answers down, or just, like I say, shout at that screen with your answer. What is the name of the enzyme which digests fat? And the answer is lipase. Okay, fats are also known as lipids, so lipase works quite well. Also links in with the word liposuction, where people have surgery to remove excess fat. Okay, ways of remembering that. So question 2. What is a disadvantage of a mechanical valve? Now, this mechanical valve will be going in the heart, where the heart valves has failed, so backflow of blood is occurring, and a mechanical valve means that it has been made synthetically. It's not come from an animal. Okay, there are 3 possible answers here, therefore 3 possible points. What is the disadvantage or a disadvantage, or even 3 disadvantages of a mechanical valve? And our first answer is damages red blood cells. As they pass through the valve, they can get knocked and damaged. The person needs to take anti-blood clotting drugs. Don't confuse those with immunosuppressant drugs. They have the immunosuppressant drugs if they've had a whole new organ to stop rejecting of the organ, but the anti-blood clotting stop blood clots from occurring in that valve. And sometimes patients say they can hear the valves opening and closing. Okay, so possible 3 points to be had there. Moving on to question 3. What is the movement of food through the esophagus called? What is the movement of food through the esophagus called? Same movement occurs in the small intestine and the large intestine, but what is that word? It's the way that the muscles contract to push that bolus of food, bulked up with the fibre, through the esophagus. And the answer is peristalsis. Peristalsis. Difficult one to remember, that one. Brilliant if you can throw it into a exam question. Okay, question 4. What are the 2 causes of denaturing in enzymes? So enzymes can denature and then they are no longer useful. What could cause that to occur? We've got to be careful with our wording here as well. Think about that required practical we did. Okay, and the answer is extreme heat. Okay, not cold. Cold, if you think about chemistry, it just slows particles down so there's fewer collisions, but extreme heat will cause the active site to change shape and denature the enzyme. And extreme pH, and that can be high or low, it can be acidic or alkali. Okay, 2 causes of denaturing. Question 5. What is a group of tissues called? So a group of tissues working together form what? And that's right, the answer is an organ. Okay, an organ. A group of cells make a tissue and a group of tissues make an organ. Question 6. Which nutrient helps move food through the digestive system but is not absorbed by the body? I think I might have said this in one of the previous answers, the peristalsis answer. Okay, which nutrient helps move food through the digestive system but is not absorbed by the body? And the answer is fibre. Fibre is purely there to bulk up our food and help it move through the digestive system. Okay, looking to move on to question 7 now. What is the purpose of an enzyme? Okay, now just as I read this, I'm thinking of my basic definition. Okay, and it would probably be the same definition you'd have of what is the purpose of a catalyst if you were talking in chemistry, but in biology, it's a biological catalyst. What do enzymes do? Quite a long-winded answer for this one, so try and be as detailed as you can in your answer. And the answer is, they break large insoluble molecules into small soluble molecules, okay, and we call that digestion, okay. So when we digest our food, we take those large molecules that are insoluble, that means they can't dissolve, and we turn them into small soluble molecules. And why do we do that? So they can be absorbed through the villi into the blood, and the villi are found in the small intestine, okay. So it moves them through the wall of the small intestine, through those villi, into the blood. I'll give you a couple of marks for that question, 2 separate sections there. That is the definition that we repeat constantly in class. Okay, moving on, question 8. What is a disadvantage of a biological valve? So we've looked at the mechanical valve already. Biological valve comes from a pig or a cow. Okay, what's a bad thing about that? I think we've got, again, 3 possible answers. Okay, let's look at the answers then. We've got, they harden over time. So if they're going to harden, be less flexible, that means they're going to need to have further operations to replace them. And as we know, any operation carries risk. There could also be in there, which I haven't got on there, but we could add religious reasons. Okay, there could be religious reasons why you would not want an animal valve in your body. So that will work as an extra point too. Okay, moving on to question 9. What does a person need to take if they have an organ transplant? I have mentioned this already in this B2 quickfire question quiz. What does a person need to take if they have an organ transplant? It's not anti-clotting drugs. So what is it? Okay, let's have a look at the answer. It is immunosuppressant drugs. So all organs have these tiny bits of protein on them, which are markers called antigens. You know the word antigen because we cover it in B3 when we're looking at pathogens. Now that small marker, the antigen, is kind of a name label saying, I'm not part of you, you don't recognise me. And your white blood cells then start making antibodies and they fight against those little markers. So we reduce our immune system, we suppress the immune system, and then we are less likely to fight that disease. Disadvantage of that is that we've got reduced immunity, so not good in that respect. Moving on to question 10. Why are there no enzymes to digest vitamins and minerals? Why are there no enzymes to digest, means break down, vitamins and minerals? Okay, and the answer is they're already small and soluble. Okay, this means that they can pass straight into the blood without any need for breaking down further because they are soluble. That means they can dissolve and they are really, really small. Okay, moving on to question 11. Where does the blood go next? Aorta. So when the blood leaves the aorta, where does it visit next? Now, you might have the name of the blood vessel it goes to next, or you might have the name of the part of the body it goes to next. I've actually gone for both. Okay, so potentially a couple of marks here. Where does the blood go next? After the aorta. And here we go, the answer is body cells and then the vena cava, or vena cava, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Okay, so the blood leaves that really high pressure artery, the aorta, then visits the body cells to drop off all of that richly oxygenated blood, and then travels back through the vein, the vena cava, to the right side of the heart. Okay, question 12. Which type of blood vessel contains valves. Now we use our alliteration here hopefully to help us remember where we'd find the valves. Apart from in the heart, where else do we find valves? Which blood vessel? And the answer is the veins. Valves in veins prevent the backflow of blood where the pressure is a lot weaker than it is in the arteries. Question 13. Just there quickly, 2 examples of veins, the vena cava or the pulmonary vein. So question 13, which side of the heart is thicker? Remember, when we look at the heart in a picture, we always look at it as if it's in a person, so left and right are muddled around. And which side of the heart is thicker? It is, of course, the left side of the heart, and that's because there is greater pressure pushing that blood a much further distance, okay? So that blood has to get to all of the body cells, so we give it a nice big push with that really muscular wall, increase the pressure to get it round to all of those body cells, okay? So to give a bigger push to the blood going to body cells. Okay, question 14. What is the name of the chemical used to test for proteins? We've got a food test now. It's a chemical that goes purple for protein. That was another bit of alliteration to help us remember there. So what is the name of that chemical? It's the really tricky one. It's the really, really tricky one. It starts off blue, goes purple for protein. What's the name of that chemical? Sounds a bit like a piece of equipment that we use in chemistry. Okay, and the answer is biuret solution, okay, or biuret reagent, okay, so biuret. Tricky one to remember, try and lock that one into your brain. So question 15, where does the blood go next? Left atrium. So the blood visits the left atrium from the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, which is that thick side of the heart. And where does it go next? It's been in a vein. It's now in an atrium. Where does it go next? And the answer is the left ventricle, okay? In through the atrium, out through the ventricle. Moving on, question 16. What colour will Benedict's solution go in the presence of lots of sugar? Okay, what colour will Benedict's, which starts off as blue, go in the presence of lots of sugar? And the answer is red, and we remember it by our traffic lights. Starts off blue, little bit of sugar, green, a little bit more sugar, orange, lots of sugar, red, and it's our traffic light system there. Question 17. What is the name of the tubes that divide from the trachea? So the trachea is the scientific name for the windpipe, and when they split to go into each lung, what is the name of that tube? And the answer is the bronchi, if we're talking about both of them, and the bronchus, if we're talking about one of them. Okay, question 18. What drug might the doctor prescribe for coronary heart disease? What drug might the doctor prescribe for coronary heart disease? And the answer is statins. Okay, they don't help get rid of the fatty deposits in the arteries, but what they do is they remove the ability for those fatty deposits to get any worse. Okay, so if you're still having all those saturated fats, the animal fats in your diet, it stops them from building up and getting worse in the arteries, but it doesn't break them down. Okay, question 19. What is a drawback? So that's a negative of using statins for too long. So linked question here. What is a drawback of using statins for too long? What can they damage? And the answer is the liver. Okay, moving on to question 20. What causes blockages in the arteries? All these questions seem to be quite linked. So what causes blockages in the arteries? And the answer is, there's two answers here, those saturated fats that I talked about very shortly ago, and smoking. Okay, so they cause blockages in the arteries. Saturated fat comes from animal fat, the fat on bacon, butter, any meat, or the fat on that meat. Question 21. What three things can white blood cells do? What three things can white blood cells do? So we've got to think of three keywords. Give it a little second for this one because it takes a bit longer. Probably got two, hopefully you've got three. Let's have a look. We've got engulf and ingest pathogens. This was the one we called phagocytosis, where the phagocytes, a specific type of white blood cell, engulf, surround and ingest and also digest using enzymes the pathogen. We've got antibodies which attach to the antigens and make them inactive. So they cover up those antigens to make the pathogen inactive. And then we've also got antitoxins which counteract. In the past we've said neutralise, we're going to go with counteract now because it's a specific point that I've seen on mark schemes, to counteract the toxins produced by pathogens, by bacteria. Okay, three possible marks there. Moving on to question 22. Where does the blood go next? Right ventricle. Where does the blood go next? Right ventricle. Okay, so we've been in a V, so we're probably looking for an answer that is an A, because we always go AV, AV, AV. Where does the blood go next? Right ventricle. Right side in the picture is on the left. Where does the blood go? It is the pulmonary artery and then towards the lungs. Pulmonary always means around the lungs, and the pulmonary artery feeds towards the lungs, pulmonary vein away from the lungs. So the pulmonary artery is going to be deoxygenated blood going to the lungs to collect more oxygen. Question 23. Which part of the blood forms scabs? Which part of the blood forms scabs? There's four parts of the blood. These are the fragments of cells that form scabs, and the answer is the platelets. Moving on, question 24. Where are the natural pacemaker cells found? Where are the natural pacemaker cells found? These regulate heart rate. They're found in one of the chambers of the heart. And the answer is the right atrium. The right atrium. Question 25. What do we call a tumour that's formed secondary tumours in other parts of the body? Okay, so 50-50, we've got two possible answers. What do we call a tumour that's formed secondary tumours in other parts of the body? And the answer there is malignant. Okay, that means we would refer to it as being a cancerous tumour. It is malignant. We're halfway through our B2 quickfire question quiz. Hope I'm going at a good pace. If you want to have a pause and have a break, have a chat, then that's totally up to you. And we're going to move on now to question 26. What happens to an enzyme when it denatures? I've mentioned this already. What actually happens to the enzyme itself when it denatures? And the answer is the active site changes shape. So the active site we refer to as being the lock, and the substrate, the food substance, is the substrate, and that goes in as the key. And if the lock changes shape, then the key no longer fits. Okay, so the active site changes shape, and that's irreversible. Question 27. What is the name of the protease enzyme that works in the stomach? There are two enzymes that are protease enzymes. One specifically works in the acidic conditions of the stomach, and one specifically works in the more alkali or neutral conditions in the small intestine. Which one works in the stomach? And the answer is pepsin. The other one was trypsin. Question 28. What is the name of the process of bile increasing the surface area of fat? Okay, so bile comes in and it chops down the fat, turning it from globules into droplets, increasing the surface area so that lipase can attack it better later. And what is that process known as? And the answer is emulsification, or emulsifying the food, emulsifying the fat. You can imagine that sticky fat sticking together into globules. And it's kind of like, the bile is a bit like rolling droplets of sand, it's droplets of oil in sand, okay? So then they don't stick back together as well. And then that lipase can attack and do its job of digesting. Bile does not digest. Bile is not an enzyme, okay? All it does is physically pull the fat apart so it's in more droplet form. Question 29. What is an example of a lifestyle risk for cancer? We've got 3 possible answers here. Okay, they like us to talk about risk factors. Okay, so what is an example of a lifestyle risk for cancer? And the answer is smoking, obesity, linked to type 2 diabetes also, and sunbeds, UV rays. Question 30. What is a tumour that has stayed in one local area called? What is a tumour that has stayed in one local area called? So if you got the previous question about secondary tumours right, hopefully you can remember the answer to this one. And the answer is benign. It is benign. Okay, question 31. Which 2 organs produce all enzymes? So there are 4 organs in total that make enzymes in the body. Which 2 of those make all of the enzymes? And the answer is the pancreas and the small intestine. The lipase, the carbohydrates and the protease all made in the pancreas and the small intestine. Question 32. What can be placed inside an artery to open it up? So when we've got those fatty deposits, we could use the statins to stop it getting any worse, but how can that fatty deposit be pushed to the side for the artery to be opened up? And the answer is a stent. It was that mesh straw that pushes the fatty deposit to the side, very strong, very flexible, and can keep that artery open. Question 33. What is it called when there is a cause, which we have known as the risk factor, and effect? So cause and effect, where we've got a risk factor, it's a 2-word answer, tricky one this one that people tend to forget. The clue is in the word cause. And the answer is causal mechanism. It's a causal mechanism. It's basically a different way of saying cause and effect. If I do this, this is likely to happen. Okay, question 34. What do fats break down into? We've got 2 answers here. What do fats break down into? And the answer is fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerol. People get glycogen and glycerol muddled up. So glycerol is a product of fats breaking down, and when we take our excess sugar in the body and build it up into glycogen for storage, we use the word glycogen. Okay, different substance. Question 35. What is a communicable disease? What is a communicable disease? Okay, and it is one that can be transmitted to other people, and we could say it is contagious. Okay, moving on, question 36. Which part of the blood carries everything except oxygen? Okay, oxygen's carried around in the red blood cells, so which part of the blood carries everything except the oxygen? And the answer is, of course, the plasma. It's what makes the blood runny and fluid. More than 50% of the blood is plasma, carrying urea, glucose, any digested food material, carbon dioxide, water, okay, many things, everything except for the oxygen. Question 37. Where is bile made? So we talked about how it emulsifies fats, but where is that bile made? And the answer is in the liver. Okay, moving on. What happens to cells when they first become cancerous? What happens really to make them cancerous cells? What's happened to the original cell? It's a word we use quite a lot in biology. And the answer is they mutate. Okay, question 39. What chemical is used to test for starch? What chemical is used to test for starch? So we find starch in things like potatoes. And how would we test? What chemical would we put on that to see if there was starch in those potatoes? We've had Benedict's for sugar. We've had Biuret for protein. So the answer is iodine solution. Okay, question 40. What colour will iodine solution go if starch is present? So we've got a linked question. What colour will iodine solution go if starch is present? And the answer is blue-black. If you've put either of those words, you can be awarded the point. And question 41. What is the name for the movement of sugar through the phloem? What is the name for movement of sugar through the phloem? We're in the plant at the moment, so we're not talking about the xylem, which is the water and the minerals. We're talking about the phloem, which is sugar. And what is that name of it moving through the phloem? So the sugar is made in photosynthesis. It's got to be transported to all locations around the plant, so it's called translocation. And question 42. What is the gap between two guard cells called? What is the gap between two guard cells called? So we're on the underside of the leaf now, and we've got guard cells, look like kidney beans. What is that hole in the middle of those two guard cells known as? Another situation here, we've got the singular and the plural. So one stoma and lots of them stomata. Okay, either answer works just fine. Okay, question 43. What does starch break down into? What does starch break down into? And the answer is glucose. It's probably the one that we're most familiar with because we do lots of experiments in school using starch and glucose. Question 44. What is the specific name for the cells inside the leaf where most photosynthesis takes place? It's a word that people always forget, which is why I'm always trying to bring it in as much as possible. What's the specific name, so don't say plant and don't say leaf, for the cells inside the leaf where most photosynthesis takes place? And the answer is the palisade cells. Try and keep that one locked in your memory. Not the exclusive place of photosynthesis, but where the majority of photosynthesis takes place. Question 45. What is the pH of the stomach? What is the pH of the stomach? And the answer is pH 2. Okay, and if you were to be the stomach lining, I'm losing my train of thought here, sorry. The stomach lining has a mucus lining, and if you get a hole in that mucus lining, then the acid from the stomach, the hydrochloric acid, can attack the wall of the stomach, causing a stomach ulcer. Okay, moving on, question 46. Where is the bile stored? So earlier we learnt about it emulsifying fats, we learnt about it being made in the liver. Where is it stored? This is an organ where it's also concentrated to remove water and make it more concentrated, okay? And the answer is the gallbladder. Question 47, well done for sticking with the B2 quickfire question quiz. What is the mashing of food using the teeth or muscles of the stomach called? Okay, what is the mashing of food using the teeth or muscles of the stomach called? And the answer is mechanical digestion, not involving any chemicals like enzymes, which would be chemical digestion. This one is just called mechanical digestion. The churning of the muscles of the stomach, remember they like that word churn, and the breaking down of the food using the teeth. Question 48. What do proteins break down into? Two-word answer. Not two products, just two words for the one product. What do proteins break down into? So when they're digested, what do they become? And they become amino acids. So the pepsin, first of all, does the breaking from proteins into peptides, and then trypsin takes those peptides and breaks them down further into amino acids, which are small and soluble. Two questions left. Question 49. What are the two functions of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach? What are the two functions of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach? Okay, the first one is to kill bacteria, and the second one is to create the right conditions for enzymes to work there. Okay, so the acidity or alkalinity of the environment helps those enzymes to function, prevents denaturing of the enzymes where the active site changes shape. Okay, 1 point for each mark there. And the final question, nice easy one to finish. What is a group of organs working together called? Examples are digestive, reproductive, muscular, skeletal, respiratory, and of course the answer is a system. So there we are, we're at the end of the B2 quickfire question quiz. Hope you enjoyed it. Wasn't quite as quizmastery as last time, but hopefully at a good pace where you could follow, get involved, have some fun and consolidate your learning of B2. Any gaps in your knowledge, choose the video that you want to look at on the YouTube playlist and do a bit of a recap. And don't forget to click subscribe, show your appreciation for all of the videos that are on there. Hopefully you're learning lots and it's not too difficult being away from school. Well done, have a great day. Don't forget you can revisit this if you want to. Enjoy, bye bye.